The JLR interview series.
Okay, so it's Friday evening here in London, just after 8 p.m. And today, Jazz London Radio has a very interesting guest of us, a guitarist. He's based in the West Coast of the United States, and his name is Andrew Synowiec. So, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me here.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And we got Andrew on because basically he bought out a really interesting CD. Well, when I say interesting, really, really good actually. And it's called SRT. Now, it's short for three names in the trio. So that's Synowiec, Robinson, and Towne. And it's on the Jules record label. And it's a really interesting mix. So actually, before I say any more, I'll get you to talk about it. So yeah, it's the name of the CD is actually called SRT. That's correct, isn't it?
That's the name of the group. Yeah, our
Okay, that's
group is called SRT. It's almost like a super group, you might say.
yeah. So
Again, like you said, SRT stands for Synowiec, Robinson, and Towne.
mhm,
That's so it's three of us. It's an organ trio. So I play guitar, Andrew Synowiec, and then the Robinson is John J.R. Robinson.
yeah,
He's the drummer.
mhm,
Some would say he's one of the most recorded drummers in history.
yeah,
He's been here in LA making records going back to Michael Jackson, Shaka Khan, Steve Winwood, Quincy Jones, um, up until present day. And then the T is Mitch Towne, and he's kind of the organ king of the Midwest of the country. So he's doing all kinds of great stuff based out of Omaha, although he does fly all over and play all kinds of gigs and sessions as well as an incredible organ player. He's kind of a one-man orchestra.
right. So that's fascinating. So I mean, are these guys you've worked together before? Have you worked with them like in different projects? You thought, why don't we try doing something together?
Exactly. Yeah. So JR and I, we've been playing on sessions together for the last few years, maybe 10 years or so. We've been doing, various things. Of course, I knew of him growing up as a musician and checking
Mm,
out, famous records and just a person that lives on the earth and listens to the radio. I had heard him 1,000 times. And then I moved to LA and started working on sessions, a lot of records and film work. And I met him a few times on various things. We did, gosh, I think the first thing we might have done was a movie for the great film composer Chris Beck, I think.
mhm,
And gosh, I'm not even sure of the title. It wasn't Hangover, but it was something like that. One of those
yeah,
kind of real fun movies where the score is real based on like, rhythm section, kind of guitar and drums, percussion, that kind of thing.
yeah.
And then, of course, it was great to work with him. And I think that's where he, kind of became aware of me, maybe for the first time. And then we kept seeing each other. And he would say, gosh, we should do something. And it was like, yeah, that'd be great. But I was busy. He was busy. And then a year would go by. We'd see each other again. Hey, we really got to do something. Same thing. A year would go by. We'd see each other again. And then like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, gosh, it would have been kind of right before the pandemic, we
Mm,
did a movie called Bullet Train.
oh,
And it was fun because we actually did kind of like a one-to-one recreation of Staying Alive by the Bee Gees.
oh,
And it was great. I mean, he just kills that kind of stuff. So he was on drums, it was myself, and also the great guitarist Dean Parks was on guitar.
hmm,
And that was a lot of fun. And again, we said, hey, we really got to do something. So about a year later, I got an email out of the blue from John, and he said it was kind of like a real quick, like, hey, July 9th and 10th, let's make a record. You free? Hit me back. And I was, it was like, heck yeah, let's do it. So from there, it really materialized to where we got on a Zoom with Mitch and we talked about a concept for the band. We sent each other some files. Hey, I have an A section that I think would work really great for a song. Can somebody write a B section? Or like, hey, I've got a groove, but I don't have a melody, that kind of thing. And we collaborated and came up with maybe 10 or 12 songs. And we got together. We had sort of like one day of setup and real quick run through, and then one day of recording where we did maybe 5 or 6 songs, and then a second day of recording, 5 or 6 songs. Boom, just like that, we had a
yeah,
record. And from there, everything really took off. We had some interest from some people in Japan that wanted us to come play there. So we
mm,
did a tour of Japan, which was just incredible. Before we even got to the hotel, there were people waiting for us outside with records for
Wow.
us to sign. It was just incredible. And actually, a label over there was interested enough in us to actually put out the record for us. So it's been they kind of wanted like the exclusive feature of that record. So it
Yeah.
came out the one that we're actually currently talking about today. It came out only in Japan. I want to say in June of this year. So it's been out for a little while over there. They did a big push. It was crazy because we actually went into Tower Records in Tokyo, and it was like this huge floor to ceiling display with
Wow.
SRT, and it's our picture. And we got a really funny picture where it's kind of surreal because it's the three of us standing in a row in front of a picture of us standing in a row with the record there. So yeah, it was great. It was very exciting. And but yeah, so now the record is going to be officially available worldwide September 8th.
Oh, okay. And that's on Dual Records. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah. And you can stream it everywhere you stream music.
I mean, it's we've been playing tracks so far on rather interestingly. So we do something called the latest releases where we play tunes. But also,
Great.
I've been featuring a couple of tracks on jazz rock, but also on rock and blues. So I can ask you about it because it's a really seamless record. It's got a lot of soul jazz bass sound, but also it's got quite a lot of fusion sound. I mean, it's really seamless how it goes from track to track like that. Like going uptown is really nice soul jazz sort of groove, and then other tracks are really like fusion, rock fusion. So, I mean, was that something that you guys had in mind, or did it just happen that way?
I think it just kind of came about pretty organically. I mean, I can only speak for myself in that I have a pretty diverse background, you know, partly due maybe to my age, but also just where I grew up and the kind of music that's really kind of in my DNA. And I've always felt that, you know, jazz is such an interesting word. And for me, it's like anyone born after the year, let's say 1950 or so, can you really, if you've been alive on the planet, are you really just a straight ahead jazz person? I mean, unless you really lived in a vacuum or something, to me, it almost feels, it would feel like dishonest to only play straight ahead jazz. As much as I love it,
Hmm.
there's so much other music that has happened since then that's part of my DNA. It would almost be disrespectful to not honor all of that stuff as well. So like I love George Benson and Wes Montgomery, but I also love Stevie Ray Vaughan and
Stevie
Steve
Ray
Vai,
Vaughan.
and Pat Metheny and
Yeah.
uh, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. So
Yeah.
I always try in my own music to incorporate all those influences. And actually, now I've gotten to know the guys in the band so well after all this time, I know that they feel the same way. So I think it was only natural that, all of our collective influences would come out through the music.
Fascinating. I mean, John Robinson, he did a lot of stuff with Stanley Clark. That's how I know his name. I'm not so familiar with Towne, Mitch Town.
Mitch,
Yeah,
yeah.
but he sounds great to be honest.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's just so creative, and so it's an organ trio, meaning there's no bass player. The bass is
Yes.
his left hand and his feet, but mostly it's all coming from the left hand. He's walking, he's
Wow.
doing what a bass player would do, and then in his right hand, he's doing what a piano player would do. And that sound of the organ and the guitar is just such a
Yeah.
great. I mean, it's like chocolate and peanut butter or something. It just goes together so well.
Fantastic. And what about sort of plans to play in Europe? Is that something that could happen
Oh, I
maybe
sure
next
hope
year?
so. And we've had some interest. Naturally, even with only three people, it's a pretty tight, contained unit. But we need, more than just one thing to get over there. And that takes time to line that kind of stuff up. Now, we did a tour of the East Coast of the U.S. Recently, and that was really a smashing success. We played a great club in Baltimore, which is kind of my hometown. I grew up right
Okay.
outside of there.
Oh.
Great place called Keystone Corner. Then we went up
Oh yeah,
to New York
I've heard of
City.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. And then we went to New York City and did 5 nights at Birdland,
Oh
which was
wow.
just incredible. To be there in that historic venue and play our music for people, it's just kind of indescribable feeling. I mean, it was just incredible. And then we played a really cool venue in upstate New York. And finally, we played in Boston at the Berklee College of Music, actually. So
Hmm.
nice little run there. And yeah, it's something that we're hoping to do a few times a year, kind of really all over the world. I know there's already talk of going back to Japan. And
Hmm.
like I said, there have been some European venues and festivals and things that we've been looking into. How do
Okay.
we make it kind of all happen at once would be ideal. So kind of
Yeah.
make it all in one trip. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be fantastic. I mean, Japan does seem like for jazz artists really the place to go. I mean, that's probably always been the case, but it still is the case. So
It,
that's
it
great.
still is, and it's just incredible. Like I said, I mean, people were lined up before and after with, not only our record, but like records I had played on as a session musician. They came, it was like, wow, I've never even seen this. Like, and here they have it, and they, wanted me to sign it and that kind of thing.
That
And
is amazing.
it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it is amazing. It's really cool to, to know that American culture is really kind of respected over there,
Mm.
which is nice, and
Yeah.
jazz in particular.
Yeah. And on that, I just wanted to ask you a bit about yourself. Now, I'm interviewing, I can see an amazing amount of guitars in the background. That is an incredible amount. Banjos as well, all sorts, acoustic
Yeah,
guitars.
thanks. This is my studio. This is where I spend most of the time during the day. Um, I kind of affectionately call it my day job, although it doesn't feel like a job really, because it's, when play is the name of your job is playing, it's like it doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sit here all day long and I do tracks for people either on their songs. I have people come over, and I also play on a lot of film and television here.
Yeah.
And that's why I have kind of, all of the guitars that you would expect, but I also have, like you said, banjos and
Well, sitars.
ukuleles, mandolins, all that kind of stuff. It's helpful for film work,
Oh, I see.
especially.
So that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to ask you because about 6, 7 years ago, I actually interviewed Carl Verheyen, and
Yeah.
my
I
favorite
love
guitarist.
Carl. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a real hero of mine and a
yeah, good,
super nice
good.
guy.
I'm glad to hear it because he's a great guy. Yeah, and he's like yourself. He's done a lot of session work, and I asked him at the time, how did you get into that? Because so I can ask you the same thing. How do you find yourself getting into session work? I'm sure there must be a story behind.
Yeah, well, I think like most kids, I was in a garage band and kind of thought, oh, I want to be a rock star. And then you start to realize, as I met older musicians, I kind of realized like, oh, maybe that life is not really what I want. And you sort of start to, it's like, I don't know, to use our ice cream analogy, I must be hungry here. It's like sampling different flavors of ice cream. You go, well,
Yeah,
maybe that's not right for me, but maybe I want to be a touring musician and play with other artists. So I did some of that. And I thought, I'm not sure if that's really right for me either. And then I did a little bit of studio work. And like I said, growing up, I just loved all kind of music. I was a rock kid, but I also studied classical guitar. And then in my teenage years, I got way into jazz. So I had a pretty diverse background there. And
mm,
so when I did sort of try my hand at session work, I found that I had a pretty wide skill set that I could draw from. And that experience was like, that's my flavor. Yes, I'll take a double scoop of session work, please. And so that I sort of decided when I was in school at the University of Miami, Florida. And for me, it was like, well, I don't want to stay in Miami necessarily. And I don't think moving back home is the right idea. And if I want to be a session player, it's like kind of LA, I think at that time was the place to go.
yeah,
So I sort of jumped in with both feet, really. I packed everything I owned in my Honda Civic and drove the almost 3,000 miles west to LA. And I really didn't know hardly anyone. But I had kind of one phone number of somebody who I thought, well, maybe, the word on the street was he might be able to hire you or put your name out there. And just kind of slowly but surely, I came out here to LA with blinders on and a few demo CDs and like I said, that one phone number and like the branches of a tree kind of started to grow slowly, very slowly, but every
Yeah.
year a little better, a little better. And then actually much like Carl, I always knew once the session thing feels like okay, I'm doing all right, I wanted to also, continue the artistic side that I'd spent
Right.
so many years
Right.
developing
Right.
and do these kind of creative things like SRT. I also play my own music. I have my own projects
Hmm.
and put out different kind of records there as well and play live as well. And I've played with a lot of different big bands here in LA. So,
Oh, big band as
you
well.
know,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny. It's just I love all of it, and I never, again, kind of growing up, I had heroes like Pat Metheny, who, I mean, yeah, he's a jazz guitarist, but gosh, the amount of different music that he's put out, it's just such a wide,
Yeah, yeah.
diverse range that it's hard to kind of label him. And he was a little bit of a hero, and somebody I sort of modeled myself after.
Mm.
Another person was like Steve Morse,
Oh,
is another
Steve
guitar
Voice.
player who's
I
just so
play his stuff all
versatile.
the time.
Right. Yeah, I love his music and just always kind of been into those kind of players that had no real limits on what they could do.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating because I've seen Pat Metheny a couple of times here in London. But with Carl Behind, it's funny because when I interviewed him, he was playing over here, so I went to see him play, and I interviewed him at the venue before the gig. It was at the Borderline, and because I said to him, the first time I actually heard him was with Chad Wackerman, and Alan
Sure.
Holdsworth was on the CD. This is from the early 90s, and then the next time I heard him, it was actually his own record, and it was a blues record. So, I was like, wow, first I hear you doing this, and then you're doing something completely different. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's like just what you say. It's really nice. I love that kind of thing as well. So I think
Well,
it's
it's
important that
funny.
artists like that keep going.
I really feel like most people would enjoy listening to the Beatles and Aaron Copland and you know Rage Against the Machine,
Yeah,
back to back to back, and yet radio now it's not music driven, it's ad driven,
yeah,
and so a lot of it is like, well, we need to be able to sell trucks to people, so we'll make you know what I mean? So we'll make a station that only plays country music
yeah, yeah,
versus why not play Jason Isbell, you know, and then play Bruno Mars? It's like love both of those artists, and I think most people do too.
mm,
Um, but unfortunately, a lot of times the marketing side wants to try and put you in a box because it's easier to sell.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that makes it difficult for artists like me and Carl Verheyen, and you know, I mean, luckily though he and like Pat Metheny, those guys have been doing it forever. Um, I don't know. I think maybe I have hope that with the internet and new technologies, hopefully some of those barriers will actually start to break down again, you know?
well, I hope so. I mean, in France and other countries, they've still kind of retained that. There's a certain number of stations that literally mix up the playlist like there's no tomorrow. So
That's great.
they've kept
Yeah.
to their guns and they've continued to do it. So that gives me hope. And as I say, they're on the internet now, so the whole world can
Right.
hear those stations. So
Yeah. I played in France maybe 10 years ago and it was incredible. I mean, the audiences were wonderful and
Yeah,
real appreciative again of our music and like you say, very they had open minds. It's
yeah,
nice to see.
yeah. Okay, well, I just one last question. So you also got your own CD coming out as well soon. Like
I
your
do. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So actually, almost exactly a year ago, I recorded my second full-length solo album, and it's kind of I've been calling it's kind of like Larry Carlton meets Jeff Beck meets the Allman Brothers. So it's all instrumental, but it's very blues based, and it's I've been sort of saying like even though there's no singer, the individual musicians kind of trade off taking turns being the role, fulfilling the role of what a lead singer would do. So even, there's solos, but it's not like crazy esoteric 10-minute solos that wander and are only there for music students. It's sort of like instrumental music that anyone can listen to and hopefully be impacted by.
and what's
And
it called?
actually, and so that record is called Fun because it really, I think if you put it on, you will have fun listening to it, as much fun as I had making it. And I did it all in a room with live musicians in 2 days, um, up at a studio called Pliers Studio, which is owned by Jim Scott. And Jim is an engineer that spent many decades with the great producer Rick Rubin. And
Yeah.
then Jim went on to open his own place, and he's done a lot of records there for bands like Tedeschi Trucks,
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
Satriani.
Oh, yeah. I saw him. I
He's
saw him
done
a couple
some,
of months ago. Yeah,
yeah,
Satriani.
he's done some work with Tom Petty back in the day, Wilco. So real diverse kind of records that he likes to make, and that record again, it's called Fun, and it also comes out September 8th. So September 8th, you can hear two
Okay,
new
double.
records. Yeah, it's exactly double your pleasure. So it's my record Fun, and then SRT's record Vanguards of Groove.
Okay, well, I'll have to get a copy of that then as well.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's about it for me. I don't just quickly on Jeff Beck. He was one guy who actually, when he soloed, it wasn't to show off. It was because he wanted to play something interesting. So
Yeah,
I get where you're coming from on there. So yeah, I look forward to hearing that. So yeah, well, thanks for the
great.
interview. Really, really interesting interview, and good luck with both projects. And really, really enjoyed the music, and we'll play it a lot.
Thanks very much. We appreciate it. Thanks for everything you do.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for the interview.
My pleasure.
The JLR interview series.